So this meeting will be recorded. Again, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us this evening. My name is Andrew Choi. I'm the Acting Planning Program Manager with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. For those of you who just joined in, if you can please sign in the chat box. Please leave your first and last name, whether you are a DHHL Homestead lessee, or a waitlist applicant, or if you are not either of those, then you can just indicate other. Before we begin, I'd just like to introduce other members of the DHHL team. First, I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner Michael Kalekini, the Hawaii Island, one of the Hawaii Island commissioners, for taking the time to join with us tonight. Also, we have Kuali'i Kamera, who will be doing most of the presentation this evening. Kuali'i is the land manager with our land management division. Also, we have Jim DuPont, our West Hawaii District Office Manager, Julie Cachola from our planning office, who will be helping to make sure that you have an opportunity to contribute to tonight's meeting. With that, so the purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide information to beneficiaries about the impact of goats on the natural resources in the Kawaihae Ahupua'a, and to seek beneficiary feedback and participation on how best to manage the goat population in Kawaihae. While we aren't able to meet in person on this, we are meeting virtually. And I think by now, during the pandemic, most everyone is familiar with the controls in Zoom. But just in case you're not, please keep your microphone on mute when you are not talking. This helps to eliminate background noise, like if your neighbor's cutting the grass or you have family members talking in the room around you. Tonight, if you have a question, there's two ways to let us know you have a question or want to make a comment. You can either type your comment in the chat. Julie will be monitoring the comments in the chat, or you can raise your virtual hand, and I will do my best to make sure I can identify that your hand is up and call on you. Again, please keep in mind that this meeting is being recorded. We will be posting a recording of this meeting on the DHHL website, the same page that you used to sign in to this meeting. Oops, not quite done yet. Also, just a reminder, if you haven't already done so, please sign into the chat, your first and last name, if you're a DHHL applicant or lessee, and if you're not one of those, other, you can indicate other. While we are not able to meet in person and we are meeting virtually, we still have a kuleana to one another. So just a reminder, please be respectful of the person talking. Please do not interrupt the person that is talking. I'll wait for the facilitator, which tonight will be me, to call on you or type your question into the chat box, and we will get to you in the order of the questions. When addressing other participants, either verbally or in the chat box, please be respectful, show aloha, and treat others how you would like to be treated. Also remember that we are here to learn from one another, and that we might have different opinions than some of the other participants in this meeting. So let's agree to disagree and acknowledge that people may have different perspectives than your own. And then lastly, have an open mind, take home new ideas or new information. Let's all of us, DHHL staff included, make sure that we take home new ideas and new information with us. So tonight's agenda, we have really two main parts. One is a presentation portion in which staff will be giving more information about the topic about goat management and watershed health. And then the second part of the meeting is an opportunity for beneficiaries to share their mana'o and provide feedback. The other thing about tonight is we're trying something a little bit different. Before we actually get into the presentation, we'll have an opening poll question for you folks to fill out. Again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide information to beneficiaries about the impact of the goats on the natural resources in the Ahupua'a, and also to seek your input on how best to manage the goat population in Kawaihae. So this is the opening question. We just wanted to, before we delve into things, just kind of get a sense of what people's perceptions are in the Ahupua'a. So I'm just going to be doing a Zoom poll, and you can respond via the poll. We'll revisit this question later on in the meeting, and we'll have an opportunity later in the meeting to discuss it verbally with you. But for now, if you can just quickly take the poll. And then I'll give you maybe about 2 minutes to answer. So it looks like about half of you have voted. So we'll give you, for those of you who are still deciding on your choice, we'll give you maybe about a minute more. Okay, I'm going to close the poll for now, but again, we'll revisit this question later on in the meeting. We just wanted to get a sense of how people are thinking about goats at this time. So I'm just going to quickly share the results. So it looks like for those of you who were able to take the poll, it seems like most people acknowledge that goats are a threat to the watershed. And also a good portion of people acknowledge that goats are a threat to the watershed, but also view them as a beneficial resource for food or potential income. So we'll come back to this later on in the meeting. But for now, we'll go to our presentation. So I'd like to introduce Ku'i Kamara, who is the land manager on Hawaii Island, primarily responsible for Humu'ula and Aina Mauna, but he's graciously given his time to other Malama'ina activities on Hawaii Island involving the HHL lands. So with that, Ku'i, take it away. And let me know when you advance the slides.
You have to unmute.
You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you so much, Andrew, for the introduction. So aloha, my name is Joseph Kwili Lindsay Kamara, originally from Molokai, now living in Kaumana. So first of all, just mahalo to everybody from the community who took the time out to be here tonight, and to who's seeking to better understand this issue, and also for spending the time to come and share with us on your mana'o and your values, and help us to put together a plan to move forward on this issue. I just wanted to start off with so lelo no eao that really hits home for me, and it's hahai no ka'ua I ka'ulu la'au. So what that means in English is that the rain follows the forest. Not only follows the forest, but the rain always follows the forest. So I just wanted to paint a picture of what Kawaihae may have looked like in the past. I know that this is not my my wahi or my place where I'm from. So I know that a lot of people in the community probably have a lot more knowledge of this area historically than myself. I just wanted to share a couple of things. In the past, Kawaihae would have probably been a dry forest or shrubland down at the coast, near the Kalapa community, extending, connecting into a wetland forest, Mauka. And it probably would have had more persistent rainfall and stream flow in the past. Just going off what so the knowledge from our kupuna that when this place was forested in the past, we probably had more abundant water resources. Also, we can see a little glimpse into the past when we fly over the digital lands of Kawaihae. We can see extensive dryland agriculture, which tells us that we had at least enough rainfall to grow uala and other mixed agroforestry with sugarcane and other things as windbreaks. And the kupuna utilize the resources of this area and set things up in a way that they could actually grow crops in these lands with the available rainfall. In 1793, Captain Vancouver brought the first cattle and sheep to Hawaii. He actually brought them into Kawaihae, so into Kawaihae Harbor. So in South Kohala, so up into Waimea, this would have been the first place in Hawaii that actually had grazing animals. So, a lot of times, and I want to just touch on something really quickly, when we talk about quote unquote ungulates and ungulate management, or whether it's goats or cattle or sheep, it's sometimes it's a two-sided issue where they're 100% bad or 100% good, and so we understand that the truth is somewhere in the middle, that these animals are a resource. They are great. This area from Kawaihae so up into Waimea, it's very strong Paniolo history. These animals have fed our people for generations, and it's a part of our the makeup of our culture now. And just to acknowledge that, but also to look objectively at the situation that we're dealing with, and issues that we're facing, and natural resources issues that are before us. I just wanted to take a quick minute to mahalo the cattle and the sheep and the goats for the resources that they have been for us in Hawaii. So over the past just over 200 years, the landscape in Kawaihae. I was looking for some really good photos from a long time ago. I didn't find too much, but we can guess that there's been great changes in the landscape here. In Kawaihae, we have one of the steepest gradients in rainfall. We're down in the coastline near the Kalapa community. We have less than 10 inches of rain a year, and just 7 miles up in the Kohala watershed and the forested areas. So in the Wawakua, we have over 120 inches of rain. So it's a very steep gradient. And we have bits and pieces of what it might have looked like in the past, but we can assume that there has been great changes over the past 200 years. So what we're talking about here today, so Andrew, so if you can change the slide, please. So this is a very basic map. It's a very basic map of the project area, or so the Honokua watershed. If you can see that the big waterway in the middle of this red line, this red area. This is the digital parcel that we're talking about today. The area that we're talking about directly mauka of the Kalapa homestead community, and extending all the way up onto the Kohala Mountain Road, encompassing about over 7,000 acres. So we've been very blessed to. So I'll say, so we actually have a couple of things going on this parcel currently. We have so a right of entry, so it's Palikoki Ranch, so Palikoki Ranch for the ranching of this area, and we also have a right of entry to the Kohala Center, who has been able to acquire grants and funding to be able to fence, do exterior fencing for this parcel, which is the red lines that you see, and hustle the funding to be able to bring those resources to Hawaiian homelands so that we actually can, it's actually the first step in managing the goat population, so in Kawaihae. So we do have Dick Merkel with us, who is, so maybe I can, but let him so share his title, but he basically managed the field operations for the Kohala Center and the field crew. And I'm going to pass it on to him to share a little bit of the work that's been done in this project area, as well as the other important work that's been happening to protect the watersheds of Kohala.
Mahalo ku, and mahalo Andrew, and also mahalo everyone that's on this meeting. So as Kuli'i said, I work for the Kohala Center as their field crew leader. And I kind of want to start off by saying that I was first introduced to Kohala, fortunately, right after high school. I moved from Puna, and now I live in Waimea. And I'm fortunate to still continue working out in Kohala a lot. And I'm just always at awe with the amount of resources that Kohala still has, and the abundance in Kohala. I feel really privileged to be able to work as the field crew leader for the Kohala Center. So as you can see on the map, the red line that Kuli'i was talking about, everything in the dark red was built by either past field crews for the Kohala Center or current folks that are still on the field crew. And the entire perimeter fence, it took many years to really, finish up the bulk of the fencing. And then just recently, we've been working on the fence that goes around the Kailapa community on the left side of your screen, where it says Kailapa Homesteads. That fence was just finished up just recently, and we still have to do the fence that runs parallel to the highway to make that whole community area goat proof. But we're working towards that. Next slide, please. So as most of you know, goats are a huge impact on the land. This photo just shows on the right side of the screen what a area that is populated with goats looks like versus an area that the goat population on the left side is down to zero or nearly zero. And of course, you can see Kawaihae breakwall in the back. Next slide, please. This photo was taken during a big flood event that followed a fire. And I've seen flood events like this empty into Pelikane Bay and come out through also Honokoa Gulch, similar to this, a few times now. And it doesn't necessarily have to involve fire to look like this. But as you can see, there's a lot of sediment ending up in the ocean and going on to reef systems. And part of that sediment is known to be from goat traffic and goat activity. Next slide, please. So these two images just kind of touch on some of the work that's been done in Kawaihae 1 of Kawaihae 1 Watershed. And the image on the left is my field crew has a truck and trailer that we put a lot of abuse into doing the fences up on the hillside. The photo on the right is was given to me by Julia Rose. She owns a boat and she took that image during a high wind event. And I'm sure that most of the Kailapa community has seen stuff like this in the recent past. Next slide, please. This image is, of course, Kailapa as well, right after the big fire that happened and it came onto the actual community land. My crew and I built a fence right before the fire happened. And as you can see, the fire, doesn't care about the fence at all. It goes right through it, no matter if there were a lot of goats on one side and not that many on the other. It doesn't matter. It all burned. But fortunately, the fence is still mostly intact. We probably will have to replace the wire a little sooner than expected due to the high heat. But I just wanted to point out that goats can be a tool for fire management, but it has to be done in the right way, and you have to have a concentration of goats in a certain area to be an effective tool for bringing fuel loads down. So that's mostly why I included this photo in the slideshow. Next slide, please. I don't have to say much about this slide. This is just a stream that feeds into Honokoa Gulch, just on the Makai side of the Kohala Mountain Road. So there's still water flowing up Mauka, and hopefully, we can see a little more of that trickle down over the next, 10 or 20 years, or hopefully sooner. But it's going to take a lot of effort and energy to regrow the native forest up on the hillside. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start by drawing attention to the photo on the right. That pu'u that you see in the cloud is pu'eke, and part of that pu'u is on the Queen Emma property, and I think part of it is on state DLNR land. But anyway, as you can see, part of that photo is pasture land and part of it is forest. And the fence line that divides the forest and the pasture has been up for many years, and it's the reason why there still is a forest. And fortunately for Kohala and all Kohala's residents, we still have a cloud forest and all of its resources, all of its many creatures and beings in that forest. The Wawakua is an extremely special place, and I don't have to say that, everybody knows that already, but I just have immense respect for that place. And the photo on the left is also from the summits of Kohala. There's still ample water coming off the hillside in some of the protected areas up there. Next slide, please. This is a photo I just took recently on a fencing trip. It was actually this past week. My crew and I camped in Kohala, and we built fence or repaired fence. And on the way back to our camp, this area is really just amazing. It's just such a beautiful place, and I just can't get enough of images like this. Even when I go home, I gotta go cycle through my phone and really just be at awe with all the places I get to go. I'm super fortunate, but I have high hopes that one day on Kohala Mountain we'll have more forested land that looks like this, or at least getting to that point. Next slide, please. Again, this is some of the summit regions of Kohala. You know, Kuli'i said that the rain follows the forest, and that's exactly true. Every time I go up there, I'm wet. Whether it's raining or not, I get wet. The forest is abundant with moisture in Kohala still, and I'm just gonna end there and say mahalo. I just wanted to share a few of the images that I wanted to bring to today's meeting, and I hope the best for Kohala. Aloha.
Thank you so much, Jake, for sharing. I mean, for all the work that so Kohala Center has done, and the infrastructure that you know, and the funding that you guys are able to bring to DHL lands. It's I cannot say enough about that. And thanks for sharing. You know, just sharing a little glimpse into the forested areas of Kohala. I really love those. You know, it makes me miss the mountain. So when I see the picture, so thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you so much. So Andrew, so if you can go to the next slide. So, you know, so getting back to the project area that we showed in the last map, you know, so this wouldn't have been similar to the forest of Mauka. There's, you know, there's in Kawaihae, the forest would have been different. Would have had Kawaihae in some areas, would have Ilima, some areas A'ali'i. Down lower, we would have had some wili trees and some more Ilima and shrubs down on the bottom. So, but you know, the forest is just a stone's throw away. But I just wanted to, you know, come back and you know, after kind of talking about what we might have seen in the past, just really kind of so dig into it and really take a good look at the current situation in Kawaihae. And you know, it's something that you guys so in Kalapa probably experience every day, and the landscape so that you guys see every day. So currently there's a landscape. The landscape, you know, is so with the loss of forest cover, so the changes in so in the way that we used our lands in the past, you know, so there's loss of forest cover. So reduced forage currently with the goat population, you know, so even the goats compete with cattle for forage, and compete with cattle for with the land. So they compete for other productive uses. Extreme erosion and dust. And basically, the trees and plants roots, they're basically a net that catches, that holds the soil down, that keeps them to the ground. So when the rain or the wind does come, you know, if you have roots in the ground, it actually will hold the soil there. And if you have trees, so in your gulches, it actually will catch some of the sediment that's coming down and coming past in rain events. So some of the images that Jake showed of the ocean after these big events, especially after fire, where even the grass is gone. That's when you really, you know, those roots in the ground is really what keep the dirt so where they're supposed to be, not only to keep the reef safe and to protect so a healthy marine environment and so our fish and so other things, but also to keep our soil so where it can be used productively for agriculture. The plants are very important. You know, it's hard to get a grasp on what the water resources might have been like in the past, but we can assume that the water resources are have been diminished. So the stream flow is more limited and only comes down probably annually or even just in big events, big and storm events. And when you have those big events, that's when you really get your erosion. If you can keep a steady flow of water, you know, that comes down further down, so you really, you keep your soil moist and able to absorb more water versus, these hard pan soils that when the rain does come, it doesn't absorb much at all, and it just goes down into the ocean. So, so our soils are actually water holders as well, as well as our aquifers, and the more moist and shaded and enriched with organic matter and roots that we can keep it, the more able it is to absorb water when it does come. So we've had groundwater depletion and salinization. We have wells on DHL land in the project area that have very high salinity. So we can kind of guess that the water that might have been recharging into our aquifers in the past has been diminished. Of course, we have offshore resource impacts, with so sedimentation of our reefs, the killing of our reefs, and displacement of our fish. And though we do understand that that our livestock, our livestock and feral animals are a precious resource, just remembering that, a general statement of the more distant past is that we supported a large Hawaiian population in Hawaii, and their main source of meat and protein was fish from the ocean. So even though it is a good resource, it might not be the best idea to sacrifice one resource for another. Currently, we did a brief flyover, and a rough estimation of the goat population within this 7,000 acre area is over 5,000 animals. There's over 5,000 goats in this 7,000 acre area. And with the low rainfall and the low forage growth, to me, it looks like it's maxed out. It's beyond the carrying capacity of this area. So I'll just have some. So Andrew, if you can go to the next slide. So I also have some just some pictures to just paint the picture of the situation up there. So on the left,
Excuse me, Kuli, there was a question that came in while Jake was going through his pictures. If you can define whether what we're looking at is Hawaiian homelands or somewhere else in North Kohala.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So so for this picture, the area on the left, so with the grass, is so would be Queen Emma land, lands, and it's ranched, it's under lease to ranch to Parker. So I'm sorry if I get any of this wrong, but my understanding is it's leased to Parker Ranch for ranching, and they're managing it for cattle ranching. And have greatly reduced the goats on the left-hand side of the fence. On the right-hand side of the fence is the project area that we showed in the previous map. This fence up here is the fence that the DKC built. And this, so the goats, so on the right-hand side, we currently haven't started a concerted goat management program. So on the right-hand side of the fence, we have about, at least 5,000 goats in 7,000 acres, as well as ranching by Palikoki Ranch. So we have ranching, both ranching and goats, and the right-hand side is digital lands. The left-hand side is Queen Emma lands. Andrew, you can go to the next slide. So this is a picture earlier in June. So we did a brief flyover. So the picture on the left, is goats that we've seen, and even in the top right-hand side of that picture, you can kind of see there's a whole bunch of goats. In this picture, is over 100 goats if you look really closely, and so they're abundant and in large numbers and moving in large herds currently. So in the project area. On the right-hand side, this is just a picture of the Honokoa drainage. So the Honokoa Gulch, and you can see how how I once would have had maybe in this area Kawaihae and wili trees, and maybe some money in Ali, but these slopes so would have been vegetated. And so in the past, when water would come down, it would be slowed down enough that it could be absorbed into the ground, absorb it into the ground, and then come back out into springs and other sources that feed back into the Honokua stream slowly, and be filtered through the ground in the past. So this is really so really, so we talk about erosion and deforestation. So Kawaihae is just a really it's a really good example of deforestation. Next slide, Andrew. Oh, okay, so we're here already. So what we want to share with you now, and kind of and jump into for the rest of the night, is share so a couple options. These options that we're sharing are not the only options so available, and they're not standalone options. Any one option doesn't mean that we cannot do another option, or any combination of anything shared, as well as so other possibilities. It's just we're just sharing from our experience what some possible options are for goat management, and we really appreciate you guys' feedback on what what feels pono for you guys community and fits in with the values and the values of beneficiaries. So in Kalapa. So the first, I guess the first approach that we're looking at. So we're gonna look at 2 approaches and 3 total options. So when I say approaches, I mean generally, so we're looking at live capture. Two approaches is live capture, and then so lethal methods or killing of the animals on site. So we're gonna go through 2 options under the live capture approach. Yeah, so kind of I'll just jump right into it. So live capture. So Koala Center has gotten funding for fencing, but also to assist generally. I'm not going into specifics, but they've gotten funding to solve the sediment issue. So in Honokua. So the first option that we're going to look at is so Watershed partnership, and so in collaboration, so it's with community for live trapping. And when I get into this, so it could be 99%, so Watershed partnership, or 99% community-led, or any any combination, of Watershed partnership supporting the community for live trapping. So just generally, just to kind of paint a picture of what that might look like. It might look like having trapping areas and holding pens, and then working so in collaboration to put up the trapping infrastructure, to do drives, and then to figure out what the best use of the goats are. So some of the advantages, so some of the obvious advantages of a watershed and community partnership for live trapping would be that our watershed partners are very flexible in their ability to partner with the community, to take a leadership role or to take a supportive role, with TKC and the type of funding that they were able to bring in. So in our previous conversations, they're really flexible in their role in trapping. And it's just from, I don't want to speak too much for them, but in our conversations, they're really flexible in either taking a leadership role or taking a supportive role with the community, so in a live trapping effort. Another obvious advantage of this option would be that there are huge opportunities for meat for the communities or for other uses of goats, whether it's for use for fire retention in certain areas, or fire prevention in certain areas, or even possibly for income generation. Another really good, so another awesome pro is that TKC have access to grants for infrastructure, and they already have invested a lot of time and effort into the so I might have the numbers wrong, but about 12 miles of fence to actually contain this area, and actually the first step to putting together a successful plan. They've been able to bring in that money for the infrastructure needed to have a successful program. Another pro is that TKC has expertise in all aspects of watershed management and restoration, from fencing to ungulate management, and all the way into restoration of protected areas. And another awesome advantage of the community working with the Watershed Partnership is the community involvement in watershed management, learning not only the areas but the techniques that it takes to manage landscapes. And it's a possibility that the keikis coming up might be inspired, or really get connected to the land, and so in the future be a bigger part of the management of their ahupua'a. So I'm sorry, so it looks like we got cut off a little bit. So some of the cons, or the hurdles of this option would be the cost for the infrastructure, of trapping infrastructure, and the labor cost, and the time. So it takes an investment of time from our partners as well as our communities. So that cost would have to be factored in. Any cost for additional fencing for trapping infrastructure, so have to be borne by the community or the partnership. It's not necessarily a con, but or a disadvantage, but part of what we want to find out, but maybe not directly through this meeting, but through further conversations, is what the community's interest in goat trapping is, and what their capacity is. So what their capacity, and what I mean by that is, so maybe there's a lot of interest, but we don't know exactly how much goats or trapping the community and the partnership could handle. So a rough estimate, if we're dealing with at least say 6,000 animals, we would like to be to have a successful program. Just talking rough estimates here. You want to be able to reduce the population by 50% a year. So and then 50% so next year. So we're looking at if you want to be successful in 3 to 5 years with the current population, we have to remove about 3,000 animals from the project area. So there might be interest, but what is the capacity? So what is the capacity? So that's something that we'd like to, if there is interest, that we'd like to have further conversations on, and trying to find out where, so how everything fits together. And again, having a community element does not rule out any of the other options. And I believe in the future, it probably will be a mixing of a couple options to be successful. We can't really see the very bottom hurdle, but so TKC has a big kuleana, and any time and effort that they put into working on the goat issue takes them away from their other kuleana. So that's there, and we'll have a chance to come back to these to these different options. So right now, I'll just kind of go through them. So Andrew, if you can move on to the next slide. Okay, so the next option under the live capture approach is professional trapping. So professional trapping would include so the department going out and looking for someone, so probably competitively, who has the capacity to catch and market goats, to be able to offset the costs of the infrastructure and the time it would take to capture goats. So a real big advantage of this one is so implementation. So so because of the value that someone professionally could get from these goats, so we could put together a competitive contract for high capacity for removal and access to markets. So so what I mean by that is that they'd be able to catch and move a lot of goats. So that's a big advantage of professional capture. There could be access to meat by the community. So so what we do, so I work in Humuula, so on the Ainamana lands, and we created for the feral cattle there who are really devastating to our ohio forest. We've put together a competitive license process, and in that license process, we've kind of diminished the income to the department and replaced that with requirements for our licensees to provide meat to our communities. You know, it's not enough. I mean, so it's not a whole bunch that's going to feed everybody, but at least it's something. You know, so we found that that resource is very valued by our communities. So we did put together licenses. So we have templates for licenses for professionals to come in, capture animals, and be able to give back to our communities. So there is a possibility for income generation to offset costs, and also so within this, there is possibilities for any income that might be generated from this project to go into infrastructure, further fencing that actually stays on the land. So instead of DHL trying to extract a dollar amount from the goats that get left, maybe it's a per linear foot that goes back into the management of Kawaihae. So so there's a lot of options so available, and yeah, also so possible so digital income or trade-offs, in-kind trade-offs for infrastructure. So so some of the cons or the disadvantages of professional trapping is there's less community involvement and probably less access to meat than if the community and partnerships were doing it, were leading the efforts. And we also need oversight to ensure, so DHL needs to set up a process and oversight to ensure that it's not an ongoing process to generate a perpetual income for professionals. So what I mean by that is, touching back what I said earlier, if we have a set number of animals that need to be removed per year to get to be successful, say we need to take out 2,500 a year, and we have a professional in there who's taking out 1,000 a year, but he's not really taking the population down enough to actually make a difference. He's just taking out what is so whatever goats are born every year. It's just 1,000, and 10 years from now, he still can be taking out 1,000. And you know, even though that's a income generation, you know, it's something that doesn't change, doesn't solve any of the issues, and it's at the expense of the other natural resources of Kawaihae. So if we did look at this, a disadvantage is that we have to be really mindful of the type of process that we put out to make sure it's effective. So Andrew, if you can go to the next slide. So now I'm going to talk about another approach and lethal methods. So this is more, I don't like to use the word so eradication, but this is I like to use the word management. But so lethal methods is actually getting in there and not making the effort to putting in the work to take the live animals out, and actually getting in there and usually shooting the animals. So this would probably be done by agency, a more professional. And this could also, so I'll just come out and say that so DHL doesn't have a hunting program. So we don't have a hunting program, but or a way for community members to get up there. So we don't really have a process for that, but that would probably come under lethal methods as well. So anything that you're actually shooting it on site. So the pros for the pros for the lethal methods is something that is so immediate and highly effective in other projects around Hawaii. It's very flexible. It can be used with any live capture method in concert with it, or after all of the bulk of the live animals have been caught, or at least the live animals have been caught, the easy to catch live animals that's cost effective to catch. This method could be integrated with a live capture method as well. It's really flexible and really precise. There is potential access to meat by the community through salvage operations. It might be a little bit, it's hard to say, but if we were to look at this option, I would definitely want to look into how we could salvage so any meat that was any animals that's dispatched on the land. It offers so immediate protection of resources, and even though it would probably have to be paid for someone to do this, it's really cost efficient because it's something that's done one time and done quickly, and so so you really get the bang for the buck in the immediate improvement to the resources. And so of course, so the biggest so disadvantage of this is the killing of animals. And we know everybody has different value systems, and some people are very sensitive. So we understand that this could be a very sensitive issue, the killing of animals. So so basically, those are the three the three different options that we have thought through, and we know are probably readily available. Again, these options are not the only thing that's out there, and I would want to have everybody keep in mind that it's not either or. It could be something where these three options and other options could be integrated together, depending on the capacity, the interest and capacity from the community and our partnerships. And then and also the capacity and the opportunities for other for professional licenses. I'm sorry. So I forgot to touch on one thing, Andrew. If you can go up one slide. So live capture, yeah. So professional live capture. So this would include DHHL actually going out to look for professionals, or so this could also encompass us working with our current ranchers so on the land. So working with Palikoki Ranch and working out an agreement, so an agreement on how many animals are captured and what the compensation to the department, to the community, or to the land could be. So I just wanted to make sure I touched on that so professional capture would encompass us looking for a professional, going outside and looking for a professional, and also working with our current rancher on the land, also Palikoki Ranch. Okay, so Andrew, if you could skip to the next, okay, yeah, so there. So we're here now. I haven't been watching the chat, so I'm not sure. Julie, has any questions come up already?
Yeah, there was a question about observing no Palikaiko participants.
Koikoki.
Oh. What is their kuleana to this cost, labor, and capture?
Sorry, I'll try and look in the chat and try and read it.
So I think the question is referencing, have we reached out to Palikoki yet, and have we asked them to see whether or not they would be interested in assisting the department. I guess, and to be clear, we haven't really had like solid, like substantive conversations with our ranch, just kind of informal conversations with them. I think before we enter into formal conversations with our ranch, we wanted to get beneficiary feedback on first what are acceptable methods to the community. So I think, once we kind of go through this consultation meeting tonight, we will find out what is acceptable and not as acceptable, and we can start to pursue partners like Koikoki and the Watershed Partnership to help us implement methods that the community thinks are acceptable. So just wanted to point out too that, this is an opportunity for people to ask questions about the presentation. I know we went through a lot of material, but just wanted to also point out that following this question session, we did have questions for the community to get your feedback on. So
there was another question to clarify. So you said that there was going to be 3 options. So there's a option, live option, and then killing is option 2. But option 3 was another form of live capture. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry that I'm sorry that's a little bit confusing. There's 2 approaches. Live capture and lethal methods. So killing, but there's actually 3 options. So the first option is was community and partnership live capture is number 1. The second one would be live capture, but with professionals, either on digital going out soliciting or working with our current rancher. And then the third one, the third option is lethal methods. So basically, and that would encompass anything that encompasses actually killing the goats on site. So that one, it could take several different forms, but anything that involves killing of the animals on site, so would be option 3.
are there other questions or comments on the presentation? If not, we can ask you folks questions that we wanted to get beneficiary feedback on. But just maybe a couple more minutes if you folks had any questions on the presentation.
Uncle David Kaanu has a question here.
Yeah, my question is, I've been in Kailapa 18 plus years. To my knowledge, I've seen goats come and go over the years. Why has it taken so long to capture these goats? The fencing, I say, is good that what you did, and I see where there's flaws. But can individual owners capture goats for themselves or to sell?
Mahalo for the question, Uncle. I guess, to your first question about why has it taken so long, unfortunately, we just haven't, the department hasn't had the resources to put towards ungulate management to the degree that we put towards developing homesteads. We often are held accountable at the department to address the wait list, and we often get judged by how many people we take off the wait list on an annual basis. So unfortunately, we haven't had the resources in the past, but we fortunately have been able to think creatively and been able to reach out to partners like the Watershed Partnership to help provide resources that the department doesn't have. So this effort has really taken shape because of potential partnerships that the department has been able to form to help supplement our lack of resources. To your second question about can private individuals just go and take goats from them? The quick answer is no, but we are looking at a way to formalize a process in which so one of the options that were mentioned was whether private contracting or private capture, or sorry, what was that? What was the phrase, Kuli? It was
Yes.
professional trapping.
Yeah.
So in which the department would contract with private entities to go and trap goats. So if there are individuals who are interested in doing that, the department would be could potentially look at creating a formalized process in which to give authority to certain people or give access to certain people. But we cannot just allow anyone to go and trespass anytime to take goats, because that creates unsafe conditions. So we are looking at providing managed access. That's one of the options that were mentioned earlier tonight. Any other questions on the presentation? If Julie, anything else in the chat?
No, but I want to thank Puleni for clarifying the responses. She's like, oh, here. Oh, so who is the Watershed Partnership? What do the goats have to do with the watershed?
Cool. You want to speak to that, or Jake?
Yes. I can speak to it. So we work. So we have a sort of eventually agreement with the Koala Center to bring in resources to help us with watershed management. They were in the past. They were the parent organization of the Koala Watershed Partnership. They're no longer the Koala Watershed Partnership, but they still do watershed management and are partnering with us to work on our lands. So there might have been some confusion between the Koala Center and the Koala Watershed Partnership, but now there are two separate entities, and we are working with the Koala Center. So we have a right of entry with the Koala Center. And what do the goats have to do with the watershed? So so the goats, so as far as watershed management, so watershed encompasses anything from the bringing in of, from attracting the rain to the actual capture of the land, the permeability of the soils, the capture of sediment going into the rivers. So that's all, and eventually whatever reaches our oceans. That's all so watershed management is something that's all encompassing. So it's an all encompassing term, basically of water falling from the sky, getting into the ground, into our rivers, and ultimately into our ocean. And actually, from my understanding, in Kawaihae, goats so have an impact on all aspects of watershed management in the project area.
So somebody is raising the spay and neuter program is expensive, but a responsibility because of the populations going forward increasing. Is this a good way to manage the population?
It is something that is probably very expensive. It's honestly, so we haven't really considered it. But it is something that if it would take live capture to be able to spay and neuter them. And if they're able to be live captured, I think I think the option would be to find some value of it, actually, either as meat for the community, or to create income. So for professionals or for the community, or to be used in some way and not to be live captured and then released. I didn't go into I skipped over something in my presentation, and that goats actually are, if managed correctly, could be a resource. So if there is, it would take more fencing, but if there was a buffer, a fire control buffer, that goats could be used to keep the fire load down around the community, is something that maybe they could be used in a managed way. So as a resource, something that could possibly happen, but it's, that'll be part of a plan that would come out from all of these conversations. But from what we know, just putting the goats back on the land, and from what we can see, and the kuleana that the DHHO has to think forward and look at our ocean resources and look at our soils and look at the health of our lands, it's something that that we have to take some action on, and we have to take some probably aggressive action to shift the current situation.
So to clarify, the question that was raised about whether individual owners can capture goats for themselves, the answer is no, but DHHL is looking at other options to support this. And via private professional trapping. And if there are individuals interested in doing that, then DHHL could look at a process to give access to certain people. But right now that's not possible. Is that correct?
Sorry, Andrew. So I believe that's so that's correct. But there also is an option for us to work with the community to capture goats. So with the community, so as a whole,
Okay.
to work with a certain individual from the community, I think we would do something professionally. But if the community came together and wanted to have certain representatives, have the kuleana of providing resources back to the community, it's something so we can work with the on the community as a whole as well. And there are areas, immediately adjacent to the community. There is an area that's kind of fenced in. That's about so the adjacent lands are kind of separate from Honokoa, with several hundred acres directly adjacent to the community. And we definitely could look at options to keep goats out of people's yards. There are, so basically the plan is unwritten right now, but there is options for beneficiaries to work professionally, to seek a profession, to something professionally through the department, or also to work together. So as a community to work on this issue.
Okay, there's.
Can I just ask for some clarification around that? If residents or a group of residents or community members want to be a part of the professional trapping option, what is going to be required of them or those families to be able to receive that license? Because just to prepare for that ahead of time, if that's something that you guys are going to be able to roll out, we'd love to get our families, especially our families who have it peeling up there already and our hunting families, so that they're like at the front of the line when it's time to then maybe bid out for the professional trapping option.
We could come back, so if there is interest, so we could definitely come back and have further meetings on that. I have to go and ask, what would be exactly required. There's different things. So in Humula, so we have a license. We might be able to do something through a right of entry, but they would have different requirements. So I think, so we're open if there is interest. I don't think it's set 100% on what exactly would be required from people, but we do have a template of what we did so in Humula, and so we could so for that one, for that professional license, I have to go back and look for guarantee, but there had to be a registered business that was able to do business so in Hawaii County. So that was the main requirement on that one.
The Palikiko Ranch ROE to the 7,000 acres goes through the Kailapa water tank road, and I guess there's a problem with that needs immediate attention. Can we address those issues too? Are you
I think
familiar with the problem?
I believe the problem is that there have been people trespassing and doing off-road vehicle activities that are unsafe. I know that there's been many requests to put up a gate to block access to that road. And I know that our land management administrator has been working to try to procure the service and the materials to put up a gate, but unfortunately, right now I don't know the status or the schedule of that effort, but I can follow up with the land management administrator on what that status is.
Okay. That's all in the chat. We have.
Okay. Well, we do have questions for you folks that we wanted to get your mana'o on and feedback on. So I'm just gonna pop on the PowerPoint again and just scroll real fast to the bottom section.
Oh, we have another question that came in. Sorry.
Okay. No, go ahead.
The two
Let me
vacant
get ready.
lots, the two vacant lots that are connected to the culverts and are not buildable are being used by a neighbor to raise quote unquote goats. These goats are tied up and she is worried about them getting loose and coming into her yard. I'm not sure what the question.
So it sounds like that's a concern by the neighbor about the other neighbors use of goats on their property. I'm not familiar with the homestead lease requirements in Kailapa off the top of my head, but thank you for offering your concern. The department can only monitor for compliance in accordance with what's required in the homestead lease. So we would have to check whether or not that type of activity is allowed in the homestead lease. Right now, I don't know off the top of my head whether or not that is.
So it sounds like these are vacant lots. They're not going to be awarded, and somebody living adjacent is kind of, I guess,
encroaching.
that area. So
maybe. So that individual would need to have permission from the department in order to do that. So we can look into that further.
Isn't this ag land?
The area immediately Mauka of the Kailapa residential community is designated as general ag in our island plan. What general ag means is that it's not prime ag land. It is open space in which the department needs to hold open because further planning needs to be done in the area. We could homestead it, but there's a lack of infrastructure available to homestead it. So right now, the general ag designation is kind of a interim designation until the department can further plan for that area.
So are the lots ag lots? Kailapa?
No.
Are there any ag lots in Kawaihae?
No, there are not.
Okay, so
they're all residential homestead leases.
Okay.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we did want to ask you folks this question again and see whether or not the information provided would would have an influence on your perception of the goat. So I'm just going to ask the question one more time and see if there are any changes in the responses.
Does everybody know how to vote? They just select one.
Yep, you just push the button. So it's telling me that about a third of you have voted already. So maybe we'll give this one more minute. Maybe a little bit longer. About 2/3 of you have voted already. Okay, I'm gonna close the poll for now. Mahalo for taking it, for those of you who did. So just sharing the results with you folks. So it looks like there was a difference between the first time we took the poll and this one. More of you have indicated that goats are a threat, but could also be a beneficial resource to the community. So that's good to know that our information that we provided help to help you rethink your position. Also, there was one individual who selected that you have other views of the goat population that aren't captured in the choices above. If that individual is willing, could you elaborate on what your view of the goat population is so that we can capture your mana'o? So you can either type it in the chat or unmute yourself and just share with us what your other view of the goat population is.
But that was an interesting change. Yeah. There are some other questions that have come in.
Okay.
If we want to close, if we pause with the poll.
Okay. Yeah.
So the question was whether there are archaeological records from before the subdivision was, built as to where the goats were at that time. Before, I mean, yeah. Or do we have any archaeological records? I know we have archaeological records as part of our environmental assessment process.
We have to add on to what Julie said, we have archaeological studies that were conducted as part of the development of the homestead that documents archaeological resources. I don't know if there are specific studies that track the historic settlement pattern of goats in the Ahupua'a over time. Most of our archaeological studies focus on Native Hawaiian areas that Native Hawaiians may have habitated, and tools or structures that Native Hawaiians have constructed over time. So
There,
yeah, we don't know historically where goats have settled in Ahupua'a.
there's another question about why are they eradicating the pigs at the Kohala Mountain watershed? The goats don't live near the watershed. Or I guess it's a comment. So why are they eradicating the pigs? And then there was I think another response saying health and safety risks, traffic risk, erosion impact, and subdivision.
Okay. We don't know, well, I don't know much information about the activities in other areas with regards to pig management. And if the person wanted to elaborate on the other comments in the chat about traffic and safety and
So the goats don't, they're saying the goats don't live in the watershed, like they're down on the lower part in the denuded part?
Yeah, so I can speak to that real briefly. So I know, so we usually think of our watershed as our forested areas, Mauka, and those are the most productive watersheds, our most productive areas that catch water. But it's hard to say where the water goes underground. And sometimes, the aquifer might only be fed by the land directly above it. So I know we don't usually think of a watershed as lower down, but actually a watershed goes from source, wherever the water is captured, and all the way to where it goes in the ocean. So the Honokoa watershed encompasses everything that feeds Honokoa stream and Honokoa Gulch that is directly adjacent to the Kalapa community and exits in the ocean. So yeah, just I think the watershed is more encompassing than is usually thought. And
So the goats definitely are in the watershed, yes. Okay.
yeah, I'm so not saying it, by the definition of watershed that I understand that it goes from source to exit in the ocean. By my understanding of the word watershed, yes, the goats are in the watershed.
They thought that the water was coming from Kohala Ranch, Kahua side.
It's hard to say how the water moves underground, and as we're talking about groundwater and where the well water from for the Kohala for the Kalapa community comes from the well on the Kohala, where I believe the water source is a well on Kohala Ranch. It's hard to say where the water in that aquifer comes from, whether it comes from the peak of Kohala or whether it's gathered, whether the water that's in that aquifer is gathered directly above it in this area. So nobody can really tell. So with the technology that we have now, nobody can really tell where exactly the water that the people in Kalapa drink actually come from. It could come from directly above it, or it could come from the mountains. But because it is so depleted and salty, the wells in the area, it leads me to believe that the watershed for the aquifer that where the Kalapa community is getting the water from is a very local source.
Makes sense.
okay. So thank you for those questions. We had another question for you folks. We wanted to know what your mana'o is about what DGCHL's overall management goal should be with regards to the goats in the Ahupua'a. So we crafted two alternatives for you folks to consider. So I'm going to launch another poll. This one should be faster because there's less choices. So when it comes to managing goats, what should the department's overall management goal be? Should it be, we should work towards removing all goats from the ahupa'a, or we should work towards complete removal of goats from sensitive areas, but leave some goats in the lower lands as resources for the community? So far, it's telling me that half of you have voted. So I'll give maybe another minute for you folks to decide, for those of you who haven't voted yet.
There's a question came in. Aren't these alternatives pretty much the same?
I think with option one, we would try to remove all the goats, but with option two, we would try to remove most of the goats and leave some goats in areas that would be more appropriate for them to be, and remove them from sensitive areas. So the second option allows for some goats to remain, while the first option, if the department were to make that its goal, we would try to, as much as possible, to remove goats from all areas.
Can you define sensitive areas?
So I can touch on that so a little bit, so we showed some pictures where, so Honokoa Gulch, so it's totally denuded, or so totally bare. And those areas that's directly adjacent to our water sources are, so it'd be most sensitive and most beneficial to have vegetated, so vegetated. So the sensitive areas, so it'd be areas where we still have Kawaihae trees or wili trees, or especially the Honokoa Gulch itself. If we can have the gulches forested, those are the most sensitive areas, and the areas that we have the best bang for our buck, as far as that the trees serve the most function to prevent erosion, to hold the soil. To hold the soil, and also to basically to prevent erosion and add shade to the river bottom and stop the evaporation, so the water in our rivers can last there longer and reach lower down to the ocean. So the most sensitive areas, would be the Honokoa drainage itself. Just generally speaking.
That area never catch fire, that side over there. Is that true?
So there's a question, did the area by the Honokoa Gulch catch fire?
I guess it's a statement that never catch fire, that side.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe 10 more seconds and then I'm gonna close the poll. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll. And then share the results. So it looks like the majority of those that took the poll would like to see the department try to remove all of the goats. That should be the department's overall management goal. But there were a couple of you that would like to see goats in some lower areas that are appropriate for them to be.
So the sensitive areas in the boundary includes above the harbor And what about those homes across the harbor?
Yes, so I'm sorry. So when I was talking about sensitive areas, I was thinking mostly just watershed issues, but the most sensitive resource in this area is the community and the homes there, and properly managing the the dust and the fire issues there. Yeah, so sorry about that. The businesses and homes, I had to rethink that a little bit, but the businesses and homes in this area, and also the ocean are or the businesses and homes are the most sensitive resource that needs to be managed. And also the sensitive areas is any area that reduces the input to the ocean. The ocean is also a sensitive area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So don't you think that the goats are helping with fire management then?
So animals, so they do a lot of different things, and definitely keeping the fire load down is something that the ungulates do. So it is definitely something that the ungulates do, and they could be used. There's a potential to use them as a resource in that way, but they need to be managed properly. They do reduce the fire load, but in other areas, like on the top row to Kona, you can see where goats have proliferated and eaten everything except for the fountain grass. So they eat every other thing except the fountain grass, and the fountain grass proliferates. And the fountain grass, which is coming over to Kohala now, is making its way around. They eat everything except the fountain grass, and the fountain grass is a mean fire hazard, and it outcompetes all the other grasses. And when it actually burns, it's the first thing that comes back. So, so it's not 100%. They do reduce the fire load, but they do also alter the environment towards it's what they call sometimes fire adapted ecosystem, where only the things from areas that have constant fire. The fountain grass is the prime example of areas that get degraded so much that you can't do any agriculture, you can't grow any other grass. All you have is these highly flammable grasses that's left that the goats won't touch. So it's yes and no. So it's not a it's not a cut and dry answer. So it's not a cut and dry answer. And definitely the goats are and can be under management, be a resource. So so thanks for the comments. It's by no means cut and dry, true and false. It's they need to be managed in a way considering all the different factors that contribute to a fire hazard.
Interesting.
Okay. This is our last question for the evening. So based on what you heard in the presentation, what type of management options should the department consider in managing the goat population? So let me launch that poll.
You can choose multiple answers.
Yes, you can choose multiple answers. So like as Kuli said, it's not either or one or the other. We can consider multiple options in managing the goat population.
I like the Zoom poll option. It seems to be working well.
Don't jinx it. So I see about half of you have voted already. Maybe another minute more. I see that Amu raised her hand. Amu, did you have a question or a comment?
A comment, Andrew.
Go ahead.
So I just like to share, everybody talking about the goats on the Honokoa side, yeah? But the last big windstorm we had was the first time ever I seen the red dirt come from the Kohala side of us, from the top, as strong and as big as the kind, like the red dirt that Jake had shared in his pictures. And it came from the Kohala side. So whatever happening on this side with the goats and whatever they eating, it's also coming from this end too. And my husband being Parker Ranch Cowboy, he said he never did see them on that end. It was always on Honokoa side. So that's something so everybody know that the damage, not only on the Honokoa side, on Kohala side, is just as bad. Thank you.
Mahalo for your comment. So maybe I'll give another 30 seconds for folks to take the poll. Looks like about 2/3 of you have already responded. Okay, last chance. Yeah, I'm gonna close the poll. All right. So it looks like there's a pretty good balance between the different options, but it looks like the most popular option that was selected was trapping that is led by the partnership in coordination with the community. But there does seem to be appetite for the other types of methods as well.
Yeah, so it's really awesome to see too. I mean, and definitely so as we develop a plan, we'll definitely be reaching back out to the community. I'm not sure if another beneficiary consultation, but definitely reaching out in some form to see where the interest is and what the capacity is. You know, if it can be accommodated and the community can be part of on the solution, that would be great. That would be really awesome. So that's very exciting to see.
Okay. So that kind of brings us towards to the end of our meeting. So you're probably wondering, okay, what happens after this meeting? So the department is going to take this mana'o and develop an action plan based on what we heard tonight and based on your comments. We will come back and have another meeting to share what that action plan is. So we'll have a little bit more specifics about methods and stuff like that, and probably need a little bit more fine tuning with you folks to solidify those methods. In terms of timing for our future meeting, I would probably say conservatively, we're probably looking at the fall of this year to come back to you folks with an action plan. And then, you know, once we review that plan with the community, we'll coordinate with beneficiaries and partners to help remove animals in Ahupua'a. And then lastly, you know, we'll try our best to keep the homestead community informed as the action plan is implemented. So that could be through various means. It could be meetings, it could be emails, it could be mailing. So we'll try our best to keep you informed in multiple ways. Julie, were there any last questions or comments in the chat?
Yeah, somebody had mentioned drone swarm. I don't know exactly what that means. Jays, if you want to explain. Maybe it's another method. A swarm of drones to herd them. Okay, thank you. Oh, in the action plan. All right.
Yeah, we definitely can consider that. Yeah, Ariel, Cooley can speak more to this, but you know, aerial support sometimes
Aerial
helps with.
herding. Yeah.
No, to go back to Mr. Kohanu's question of why we haven't done anything in the past is just, you know, there's the Kamaha of that, but it's also, you know, there's a lot of opportunities and technologies now, partnerships now that wasn't available in the past. So, yeah, so drone technology is definitely, if it makes the most sense, it's, you know, it's definitely something to consider.
And then something I forgot to put on the slide, but I should have. If you folks have additional questions or comments you want to shoot our way, you can send it to dhhl.planning@hawaii.gov. And so Julie, if you don't mind typing that in the chat.
Oh yeah, I got that.
Yeah. So that's the department's email address for the planning office, and we check it on a regular basis. So if you had additional mana'o or questions that you think about after the meeting, please feel free to send your comments to that address. So Julie just put that in the chat. Okay.
And I had one more thing to add. So I got a text from our West Hawaii District Officer, Jim Dupont, that if so issues come up in the residential homestead leases, he just wanted to clarify that calling the West Hawaii District Office would be a good would be the first step in answering those questions or resolving those issues. So yeah, so if you have questions about how somebody's using their homestead lease in the residential lease, give the West Hawaii District Office a call.
With that, mahalo nui everyone for participating tonight and taking the time to share your comments with us. And I hope this was informative for you. It was very informative for us.
Okay. Mahalo. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody, for the input, and look forward to reaching out and seeing, you know, finding out so what the interest is from the community and what the capacity is, and definitely trying to accommodate the resource needs and the interests, and involving the community in dealing with this kuleana. Thank you so much. Mahalo.
Aloha.
Bye.